Have you ever just looked in the mirror and thought, why do I have that? Our bodies, they're these incredible machines, right? But they're also kind of like living museums of our own past, jam-packed with old relics from a way, way wilder time. So today, let's go on a little tour of our own internal history museum.
And that's the big question, isn't it? Why do we get goosebumps when we don't have a fur coat? Why is there a tailbone when there's, no tail? Well, here's the thing. These aren't design flaws. Not at all. They're actually clues. Each one tells a fascinating story about where we came from and the absolutely wild journey our species has been on. And believe it or not, this isn't some newfangled idea. We're talking Charles Darwin himself. In his book, On the Origin of Species, you may have heard of it, he pointed to these things he called anatomical vestiges. He saw them as echoes of our past, literal proof that we're connected to ancestors who really needed these parts to make it in a very different world.
Okay, so that brings us to the main term for today, vestigial structures. Basically, just think of them as evolutionary leftovers. They're features that were super important for our ancestors, but over millions of years, they've either totally lost their original job, or, and this is the cool part, they've been repurposed for something brand new.
So, let's step into the first exhibit in our little museum of the body. These are the parts that tie us directly back to a time before we were, well, us. They're the remnants from our primate family tree, from a world that was a whole lot wilder.
Let's start right at the bottom, of the spine that is. I'm talking about the coccyx, but you probably know it as your tailbone. It's just this little series of 3 to 5 fused together vertebrae, and it's pretty much all that's left of the tail our primate ancestors used for balancing as they swung through the trees.
And right here, we see a classic case of an evolutionary job change. The original tail, it was all about balance and getting around. But once our ancestors started walking upright, that external tail just wasn't necessary anymore. And eventually, it vanished. But here's the thing about evolution. It is super thrifty. It doesn't just toss stuff out. Instead, it gave those bones a brand new and really important job.
So today, your tailbone is anything but useless. No way. It's a critical anchor point for some major muscles, including your glutes. It helps hold up your pelvic organs against gravity, which is pretty important. And every time you sit down, it works with your pelvis to form a little stabilizing tripod. So far from being a useless leftover, it's a key piece of our modern anatomy.
All right, next up, the so-called naked ape. But here's a fun fact for you. Humans actually have about the same number of hair follicles as chimpanzees do. The big difference is that most of our hair is just that super fine, short stuff. It's not the thick fur coat of our ancestors. But the ghost of that fur coat makes an appearance every single time you get goosebumps.
The way it works is actually really simple. When you get cold or scared, a teeny tiny muscle that's attached to each hair follicle, it's called the erector pili, it contracts. Now for our furry ancestors, this was incredibly useful. It puffed up their fur to trap air for warmth, and it made them look bigger and scarier to predators. For us, it just kind of looks weird. Or does it?
Okay, this is amazing. It's a perfect example of how science is constantly rewriting what we think we know about our own bodies. Researchers just recently discovered that this little muscle does way more than just give us goosebumps. It actually acts like a bridge for nerves to connect directly to the stem cells in your hair follicles. And get this, when you're cold for a while, these nerves tell the stem cells to wake up and grow new hair. It's an ancient system for adapting, still running inside us right now. How cool is that? Let's move on to our next exhibit. In this wing, we're looking at body parts that became obsolete, not just because the world changed, but because we changed it. These are leftovers from our own progress and our cultural shifts, especially when it comes to food.
Wisdom teeth. For so many of us, they are a painful, expensive rite of passage, right? Well, they are the absolute perfect example of what we call evolutionary lag. This is where our culture, in this case cooking our food, changed way faster than our bodies could catch up. Think about it. Our ancestors needed these big, powerful jaws and a third set of molars to grind up tough plants and raw meat. But then we figured out fire and farming. And with softer cooked food, our jaws didn't need to be so huge, so they gradually got smaller over generations. The problem? Our genes kept the instructions for those third molars, which leads to the modern mess of impacted, crowded teeth we deal with today. Okay, time for a little audience participation. I love this one. There's a muscle in your forearm that our ancestors definitely used for climbing, but a bunch of us just don't have it anymore. You want to check if you do? Okay, just follow these steps with me. Put your arm down on a table or something flat.
Now, gently touch your thumb to your little pinky finger, and then just slightly lift your hand up at the wrist. See that little tendon that pops up in the middle? If you do, that's the tendon for the palmaris longus muscle. And if you don't see it, don't worry.
You're actually in pretty good company. Around 15% of people are born without this muscle, and its absence has absolutely zero effect on your grip strength. None, because it's not essential anymore, it's just slowly fading out of our species.
But here's another awesome twist of evolutionary repurposing. While it might be useless for our day-to-day lives, the palmaris longus is an absolute gift to modern medicine. Its long, easy-to-get-to tendon makes it the perfect spare part for surgeons to use when they need to reconstruct other, more important tendons somewhere else in the body.
All right, for our final exhibit, we're going to look at a feature that isn't really a remnant of an old function at all. Instead, it's a fascinating leftover from the fundamental blueprint of how every single human being gets built from scratch.
So, the age-old question, why do men have nipples? The answer is actually pretty simple. It's all about timing. In the first few weeks in the womb, all embryos, whether they're going to be male or female, follow the exact same body plan. The little precursors to nipples form before the gene on the Y chromosome even wakes up to start the process of male development. By the time it does, hey, the nipples are already there.
You know, the great evolutionary biologist Stephen Jay Gould put it perfectly. He said, their existence doesn't need some big, complicated explanation. Because they don't cause any harm and they don't cost any real energy to have, there's just been no evolutionary reason to get rid of them. In this case, evolution basically just shrugged and said, they can stay. So, after our grand tour through our body's own museum, what have we learned? That word useless? It seems a little unfair now, doesn't it? So many of these evolutionary leftovers have found totally surprising new gigs to do.
I mean, come on. Our tailbone is a structural superstar. Our goosebump muscles are a key to regenerating tissue. That extra tendon in our arm is a surgeon's best friend. And even things like wisdom teeth and male nipples, they tell a powerful story. A story about how fast our culture changed and about our shared beginnings. These aren't flaws. They're a living, breathing record of our own history.
And that kind of brings us to one last thought. Evolution didn't just stop with us. We are all a work in progress right now. Which really makes you wonder, 1,000,000 years from now, when our descendants look back at us, what parts of our bodies will they think are just fascinating, useless leftovers? What will be in their museum?
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more How Meets History.